the piece to read. Now we come to the agenda items. Is there anything to add to the agenda, including any other committee reports or anything to add? Ryan?
We had a finance committee on Wednesday, committee meeting on
Okay,
Wednesday.
so finance committee. Any other committees that will have reports? Okay, so we know that. I think with that, the next, if there's no other changes to the agenda, we can move on without objection and recognize the guys from ICS. And we'll turn it over to you, Pat.
Okay, thanks for having us tonight. And it's myself, Pat Overham with ICS, Stephanie Buckley with our office, and then Mark Lenz with MLA Architects. I will try to go through the information that was provided in your board book as quickly as possible, and then get to questions.
Just so you know, I've also promoted Stephanie so that she can talk. I still don't see a connection from Mark.
Okay. Okay, we'll be able to handle it for you guys. So I'm going to try to share my screen here.
Okay, we can see your desktop.
Can you see a PowerPoint?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. And I am just going to go with the assumption that you guys have all received this ahead of time, and so I'll just go through it relatively quickly. A number of slides are background and a higher level of detail, so I plan to kind of skim through this and provide a high level overview, and then get into questions if you've got some.
Available as a PDF in our board book, so all the board members have it.
Perfect. So our original tasks were as explained there. We had the demographic analysis. This is predominantly focused on the space and program needs analysis. And then we've got our arms around looking at deferred maintenance and LTFM analysis as well, pulling all of those things together to help you look at planning needs related to facilities moving forward. In a nutshell, I can tell you that we've done our baseline analysis. We have met with staff and administration. We've done many interviews, and we've walked through all of the buildings to assess capacities and how the current spaces are being utilized. The next several slides really go into detail related to specific space and program needs at each building. I'm not going to go through those lists for you, but I want to highlight a few different things that'll set up the rest of the presentation. At the primary school, as suspected, one of the major needs is ECFE space, or early childhood space in general. They also have a need for additional core space. Their kitchen and cafeteria is tight, and their gym space is tight. And that is certainly due to the fact that they've grown in numbers of students in their PK2 configuration right now. Intermediate school, there's a minor need for additional kitchen and cafeteria space. Front office, there is a need for a couple of additional classrooms just based on current space available. And then, as you might imagine, a lot of the needs at the intermediate school are related to the age of different parts of that facility. And we can get into more detail with some of the physical needs, deferred maintenance needs related to HVAC and roofing in that building.
Did you move forward?
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
At the middle school, we've got, similar to the primary and the intermediate, we've got a need identified to improve or create a dedicated secure entry, get that office of the middle school up to the front if possible. We do have a need for an additional 4 to 6 traditional classrooms in that building just based on current capacity. And there were needs associated with wanting us to improve some of the flexible and collaborative learning areas, and kind of some general reorganization of space for better use by special education and so on. At the high school, in general, the high school has plenty of space. 2 major needs to point out there were to consider improving and kind of reinvesting in the industrial technology areas, and then taking a look at the student wellness area. In one wing of the high school, there are some partition walls between classrooms that have caused and created acoustical issues over the years that were also noted. So when it comes down to the options, we have developed detailed options and concept plans for options A through D. Instead of going through all of those plans, I wanted to give you a quick overview of those options. The two big components of all of these options are trying to figure out how to solve
I'm sorry, Pat,
the,
into those couple of things. I just want to pause for a second.
Yep.
And say, you know, we would likely create a committee if we decided to do any building plans and changes to the infrastructure. We would probably create a committee to go through these options, select, and make recommendations back to the board. So that's why we're just covering them from a very high level standpoint, so that we have some familiarity with these, but we're not going to go into these in any level of detail. Again, we're trying to keep this brief, you know, fairly short so that we can understand the high level and high level needs, but not dig into the details.
Got it. Yep, agreed. When we look at them, there are really two components. There are solving the building specific space needs.
Pat,
And then, yep, you there?
Yeah, hold on. I just want to stop and again, pause for a second and see if there's any questions from the school board members.
Sure.
Before we go into this high level overview. Nope. Okay. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ramble, so I appreciate you jumping in like that. That helps a lot. Two major pieces that we attempted to solve in these options. One I would categorize as building specific capacity and space needs. For instance, adding 2 classrooms at the intermediate. That's something that could be handled on a standalone basis. The other I would categorize as kind of major capacity needs, and you've got really 2 spots where that's happening and kind of rearing its head in the district. Primary school is very short of space, and with your projections, it's going to continue to be short of space. And your middle school has, again, about 4 to 6 classrooms worth of space shortage. So those are 2 larger capacity issues, and there are different ways to solve those. They can be solved at the buildings, or they can be solved by shifting some things, and that's what we intended to depict in these options.
Pat, can you go forward 1 slide?
Yep, absolutely. So option A, and again, I won't go through these in detail, but option A, your current grade configuration is listed there on the left. This is the option that was floating around several years back. For those of you who may have been around, it suggests a major addition at the primary that connects it into the existing transportation building. Utilizes some of that space within the existing transportation facility for a gymnasium, multi-purpose room, and then classroom areas. This would be the link off of one of the pods at the primary school back to the existing transportation structure. Everyone follow that?
Yep.
Okay, one of the nuances of option A, clearly it displaces transportation and forces our hand to have to do something with transportation. So that's something that your subcommittee can explore and evaluate with us, different options for that. And again, I won't go through these in detail, but you can see here's the middle school, for instance, creating and reorganizing for special education, moving the office to the front. Oh, you there?
Yeah, I see Mark Lenz is on the phone call if you want to.
Great, great. And in this case, there's a modest addition for 6 additional classrooms on the end of the middle school that you can see. Option B keeps your grade configuration the same, but the major capacity addition chooses to connect the primary school and the intermediate school. So whether those classrooms are used for early childhood programs or end up being grade level classrooms from the intermediate. What this allows is for some give and take between those two buildings. It also starts to solve the core space issues at both buildings by pulling the cafeteria function out of the primary school, giving them another dedicated gym space, and it provides the intermediate school additional kitchen and cafeteria space that I mentioned earlier. Everyone follow that option?
Yep.
Okay, C and D get a little tricky, but they're the ones we want your feedback on. So option C starts to play with grade configuration a little bit. If you take your primary school and utilize it for early childhood through first grade, instead of the current PK2 configuration, you actually by default solve a lot of the issues with that building by pulling those kids out. In option C, we actually contemplate shifting that second grade level up and moving them over to the intermediate. And your major capacity addition would be at the intermediate school. Everyone follow that?
Yep.
A couple different spots that could happen at the intermediate school. If you can see my mouse, it could certainly happen here. Another option we've explored is actually coming right off of the wing by the front door, potentially solving, moving a secure office right into that addition, potentially even going far enough back into the building right here to catch the boiler plant, which happens to be right by the front door and happens to be one of the biggest needs from an infrastructure standpoint in that building. So definitely some opportunities to explore if you told us to keep option C on the table. Again, same improvements happen at the middle school and the high school if you choose to continue with those. Option D contemplates converting the primary school to a PK1. It moves second grade up to the intermediate school, converting that building to a 2-4, but it shifts fifth grade up to the middle school. So it converts your middle school to a 5-8 middle school, which is something for you to determine and evaluate the appropriateness of. With any of these options, transportation is able to stay put. Improvements can be made to address identified needs with that facility at any time on their own. And I'll give you a quick picture of what this could look like. So on the south end of the middle school, we could actually create a fourth pod, if you will, to keep fifth grade completely isolated. And you'd have a pod for fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. Can I pause there for any questions?
Would this option right here would have the parking lot that's behind the middle school go away?
Yeah, it's the parking lot that's right there, kind of adjacent to the tennis courts.
Yeah.
Yep, so I know parking is a premium on campus. It always has been. It's unfortunate, but if you actually overlay and look at the size of this addition, that's about the least obtrusive place to put it, and it actually takes over that little square parking lot back there. Got that one?
Yeah, it would
The
be.
concession stand.
Yeah,
Concession,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, between the middle school and where the concession stand football field, that building is.
Yep, and it's actually, it doesn't get into the kind of larger lot, adjacent to the field house there. It's the one that's kind of tucked up over closer to the tennis court road there.
Would still be intact, it wouldn't be affected.
Yep, exactly.
Mark, I have a question.
Go ahead, Aaron. And
Right.
So,
Mark Lenz was also added to the call, so he can talk.
yes. So,
Hi.
Pat, I'm
Well, this
wondering,
is Mark.
Pat Aaron Jurek here, school board member.
Hi, Aaron.
I'm wondering if you have any renderings where we add the pod to the middle school up there by the bus chute, so we're not losing parking space.
We don't currently, but we can certainly look at that as a location. We want to make sure we're not impacting that water detention or retention area that's up there.
Yep.
But yeah, that's definitely a possibility as well. So at this point, it was really having us take a first stab at quantifying clay, if you will, and then we can work with that subcommittee to try to figure out where it wants to go. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Or Mark Lenz, have you heard anything that I've flown over? Or
No,
Stephanie?
so far so good. No, I think it's good. Good.
Okay. I've skipped over this in a few of the options, but really this is a depiction of how the transportation building improvements could be made as is in their current location, really expanding the repair bays, expanding areas for driver lounge and before and after route communications and meetings, expanding bus and vehicle storage, and actually taking advantage of some undeveloped space over to kind of the northwest of the bus garage to add some storage. Very, very high level numbers at this point, but they are interesting, and this is something that can be further analyzed with us with the subcommittee. I talked about those base space and program needs. You can see if all of those are taken care of. We've got rough numbers on all of them, and again, whether they're all implemented now or just part of a long-range plan is, I think, an important next step. Clearly some differences in costs between how to address the big capacity need and where to do that. Whether we do that standalone addition into the transportation building, whether we look at connecting the primary and intermediate, or whether we look at shifting grade levels and letting some of the space needs solve themselves naturally. Deferred maintenance we haven't talked about yet, but we've now got a real good handle on deferred maintenance in all of the buildings, and we'll be working to spread that across your updated 10-year LTFM plan. As you can imagine, your biggest needs right now are in the areas of HVAC and roofing. A lot of that HVAC is at the intermediate school. The roofing is at both the intermediate school, but you've got a big section of the high school that is coming due sometime in the next handful of years. Any questions on budgets at this point, or are those saved for the committee? And we've got detail of all of this, but I wanted to try to give you a high-level summary. Okay. So next steps as we see it, you're right in line with what we had recommended. We'd love to have administration and a board subcommittee formed so we can continue to refine scopes and bundles and look at solution options. Once we get there, we'll start pulling in Baird, the financial advisor, and pull together and consider different funding strategies. For those of you who have been with the district for a while, you'll know that we've done a really good job in the past to structure any of your existing debt service to allow for future phases to be feathered in. We knew that there were more needs in the district than existed back a handful of years ago, and so things were structured accordingly. Clearly, we want to establish priorities and timelines, and then at some point circle back and provide final recommendations to you as a board.
Okay.
Sorry, I rambled through that so quickly, but I wanted to get through it.
I think that covered the items that we needed to cover, and I think we're good. From a board member standpoint, I think what we had done for previous construction and those types of things, we had 2 board members appointed to that committee. I would ask you to communicate to Jeremy your interest in being on that subcommittee, and we'll appoint that at the next board meeting. Okay. Any other questions from board members? Anything else to add, Pat or Mark?
I guess, Pat, one question for the board. Is there any options that we really weren't addressing that they wanted to see? Is there anything else, is a direction that maybe we didn't pick up on?
I don't have anything. Ryan's shaking his head. Any
Okay.
other board have any input that there was something that they completely missed that wasn't in any of the options?
Well, I do know from my point was one of the things that came up, one of the conversations I had with Pat and Mark, or both probably, is making sure we try to keep our students all on the same campus. I know we have some land and things off-site, but making sure as much as we can keep everything here that we have. And that's where I found out about the drainage issues that we've had in the past or issued with in the past. So that's part of why these plans came in. There's off-site options. The board would entertain that. I don't know if the community would entertain that, and it creates logistic and cost, just for us.
Transportation, all of those other things.
Yep.
I think it makes sense if we can to keep all of the students on this single campus.
We agree. I mean, it's an absolute blessing that I think often gets forgotten about up there, but you've got a really good situation as long as we can continue to deal with the stormwater and some of the other logistics.
The only other thing I would add, that I know that the city and township went through a planning about open spaces, rectangle fields, things like a basketball court, came up, and outdoor basketball and that kind of stuff. Have you visited that planning, or?
Yep, actually, we do have a copy of that, and we went through it in detail. They were pretty general on their recommendations related to some of your facilities and fields, outdoor fields, and those are certainly conversations we can pick up with that subcommittee as well. A lot of the similar topics that have come up in the past, whether it's additional lighting on softball or turf, or all of those things that have been heard in the past were part of that report. So,
All right, thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
all
Thank
right,
you.
take care.
Superintendent.
All right. May 29th was our last day of school. So congratulations to the staff, administrators, students for an excellent school year. Obviously, we had lots of challenges this year, but everyone stayed positive, took these head on, and we don't know much about next year, and we've started some of the planning, but we're looking forward to continuing to build on the tradition of excellence for which we're known. And it's been you good?
Lori, do you have a question?
Yes, once again, I'm going to ask that either somehow your mics get turned up, because it is really hard to hear either Jeremy or Mark or who's ever talking. It's really faint in the background.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we did have a number of challenges this year, and I thought our staff was wonderful and being flexible, and the students as well. And obviously the biggest one was the most recent one, the COVID issue since mid-March. That is really taking us by surprise, and lots of different things we worked through, a whole new large number of admin staff that was new, and things like that. But I think we've really set some really good groundwork to continue to move forward and build on what we've had. Graduation ceremony was last Friday, May 29th at 7 p.m. Heard a lot of very positive comments. I want to thank the high school admin team, the committee that was part of that, and all the volunteers and all the staff members who helped put that together. It was I thought it was very, very well done with the kind of the stipulations we had in place. We did get recommendations and approval from Sherburne County Public Health on all of the steps that we took during the ceremony, and it went off very, very well. And there's so many different groups that came into play that helped us out, whether it was the 20 for 20 night fundraisers, or it was the Lions Club or other groups. I'm going to say some and then I'm going to leave some out, but anyone that helped participate in that and helped plan that, it was phenomenal.
We just say that it's always hard to thank everybody, because you're going to inevitably leave somebody out. But I think suffice it to say that we could not have pulled it off without the help from the whole community. and all the people around us. And thanks for everybody that helped us out, including the students and parents that helped abide by the rules and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. It went very well. I'm sure there'll be some things that people will really want to continue with that. Whether we do or not, I don't know, but it went very well. And then distance learning, COVID-19. So we've been working on some summer programming, summer school, extended school year. Our summer school numbers are higher this year because if you didn't pass your courses during the school year due to COVID-19, you've been asked, you're going to get a no credit, or students have received a no credit at the high school level, and they're going to be asked to come in for summer school to get that grade up. And that was part of the guidance from MDE, and so we're abiding by that. So our numbers are higher, but we're doing distance learning. Part of that also is distance learning with our special ed students with extended school year. We work together as a cooperative with Big Lake, Monticello, St. Michael, and Becker to make sure we're all on the same page and make sure we all agreed on what we were doing for our special ed students, because what you do for one group of students, you need to do for the others to keep it equal. And at this time, we're going to use distance learning through June, and then we'll reevaluate what we do in July, August, if things change, or if we're able to get students into the building safely and follow all those guidelines, we'll do that. So right now it's distance learning. We've got, like I said, a large number of high school students particularly that are making up some work or finishing some work. So they've got it incomplete on their transcript right now, and that hopefully will change and we'll get them all caught up. We were fortunate to have everyone have access to the internet and devices, and that will continue with our summer distance learning. And that's all I have. Any questions?
The only comment I would make is the response that the school board got from a few community members just saying how pleased they were that we took everybody's recommendations as much as possible, and they thought that the graduation ceremony was awesome. So again, hats off to the committee, the administration, everybody.
Yeah, and I would say to that, we waited longer than most, and a lot of other schools created a plan that, they have the football field or something like that didn't get covered by
That they couldn't do.
And so we didn't do that on purpose because we wanted to wait to see what the guidance said, and then plan accordingly from that and do as much as we could for our students. And yeah, like you said, the committee was great, and Mr. Kreft did a wonderful job with, I think he hit every single spot. I don't know what he missed, if anything, as he was planning that and leading that committee.
For sure. I think Dave did a great job, and we need to recognize that as well. My only other comments that I received was that they appreciated being able to have the students all come together in one group. Although they may have been in their cars, it still was one group in the parking lot. Some other schools didn't do that or weren't able to do that, and that was a big part appreciated, as well as this being able to walk across the stage and have your name announced individually. I think those couple of things were highlights of our ceremony.
Do you know what the participation rate was? Were most of them there? I unfortunately couldn't.
Yeah, I want to say they were 6 to 10 that didn't participate,
Okay.
and a majority of them were not going to participate.
Either way.
Yeah, no matter if we had the traditional ceremony, from what I understood.
So out of 221, there were 6 that didn't make it.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know
awesome.
the exact number, but yeah, it wasn't very many.
Other questions or anything else on the superintendent's report from the board members? Okay, Ryan, you talked about a finance committee. I don't know if it's you or somebody else.
Yeah, we had a finance committee on Wednesday and discussed what the revised budget that we're going to go over later in this meeting look like, given what we did with coaches' pay and the cuts that we did earlier in the month, how that affected the general fund. And then we also discussed what the prelim 2021 budget, which is also later in the meeting, what that's going to look like.
Okay, any questions on that committee report or anything else to add? All right. Moving forward to the consent agenda, one item, so originally on the original board packet that was put out, the meeting minutes from the special meeting on May 18th were inserted in there, and we've removed those because there was it was just completely in error and needs to be revised. So those meeting minutes will be presented at the next board meeting. But the other remaining consent agenda items are available for a motion.
Also move.
So moved by Ryan to adopt the consent agenda items,
Second by Lori.
second by Lori. Okay. Say all in, is there any other want to speak or any items to be pulled? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye when I call your name. So first Mark, aye. Aaron,
Aye.
Connie,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Ryan.
Aye.
Okay, so passes unanimously for the consent agenda items. We're moving on to item 4 then, the gifts. Just so the board members are aware, in past practice, we've included the gifts as part of the consent agenda. I've asked in some advice from MSBA and in discussion with the superintendent, we move that to a separate line item on the agenda, and we will continue forward with that practice for a couple of reasons. One is it does take formal board action and discussion about gifts to accept them by Minnesota statute. And so that was some of the legal advice from MSBA. But I think it's also a good practice to recognize the organizations, the people that give those gifts to us and appreciate those. And so with that, I move the acceptance of the gift agenda, gifts outlined in the board packet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ryan. Okay, any other discussion, comments? Sorry, I lost my Zoom meeting here. I gotta get that back. Okay, so I don't see any other hands raised or comments from any of the other board members. Again, all in favor signify by saying aye when I call your name. So first is Mark, aye. Aaron,
Aye.
Connie,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
okay, and Ryan.
Aye.
Again, passes unanimously. Okay, on to the revised budget. I'm assuming Kevin.
Yeah, so should have the attachments to the board book. And the first one is the revised budget for this current year that we're in. Did change a little bit from when we kind of showed it to you on May 1st. At that time, we had a deficit spending in the general fund unassigned of $107,000. And after the coach's decision for that pay was done, and we also learned that the food service fund that we were approved at that time, we were only approved through April 30th to do the summer food program, and we've now since then been approved through June. So the food service fund actually will come out in a positive and won't require a transfer from the general fund of $25,000 that was coming out of the general fund before. And then with the coaches change, there was still some revenues in there of $20,000, but there was also $60,000 savings there, so a net of $40,000. So that's where and then there were some other small changes. But between those two, that's why it came down from a decrease of 107,000 in the general fund unassigned down to a decrease of 47,000. And then you'll also see the food service fund has a positive increase because of that. And then you'll see the community service fund, that one, because of less tuition received in this reserve for school readiness, that one did go up a $10,000 transfer from the general fund. But because we're also doing the camp op starting here in tomorrow or Wednesday, I think it is, we also don't need as much as a transfer into the reserve for community ed. That was at 75,000 before. That one came down to 15 because we are going to charge and get some fees for that daycare. So those are the major changes from when you saw it about, well, a month ago, about in that board meeting in May. So any questions?
One that I just thought of, Kevin, before the finance are the Yep. The camp op people that we furloughed earlier in the year because of COVID, are they now back because the paras are no longer, they've met their contract days? So we called back the individuals that we furloughed, and then we actually had to keep on some of the paras because of the rules, minimum number of people in the rooms. Yep.
So we had to actually kind of get more rooms. So we have to have more staff in those rooms.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Other questions? Hearing none, we entertain a motion to adopt the revised budget.
So moved.
Moved by Aaron,
I'll second.
second by Jason, I think.
That wasn't me, but I will if needed.
Ryan, I'll take the second by Ryan. Okay, discussion? No, I mean, I think we were all in severe panic mode the last time we met and talked about the budget. And, we all heard about some of the reductions and so forth. It's glad you bring up the paras and these other pieces. I think there's probably, of the people we laid off, almost all of them have come back, right? Have been brought back?
Yeah, for the most part, working?
Yes.
For the most part, yeah, all of the staff that, personnel report tonight, and others are in interviews and things like that for positions that we have open due to retirements and things like that. So there's been a lot of opportunity for a majority of members that would like to come back. So, so that is there as well. And like you said, we were in panic mode. We did a lot of things before a lot of other schools did, and they're starting to do that now, including their first union employees. We did that fairly early. We did a spending freeze really early in this process, just because we didn't know what was going to happen. And this year we're going to get by. Now it's a matter of looking at what probably 2 years from now and 3 years from now is going to look like, based on what we're hearing out of the Capitol and from our MSBA teams and MASA and groups like that, NASBO. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? And all in favor, signify by saying aye when I call your name. So it's me, Mark, aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Connie?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
and that passes unanimously and is adopted. On to the preliminary budget for next year, 2021.
Okay. This budget, you should also have attached to the board book. Not a lot of change on this one from when you did see in May. But this does have all the reductions in this that you had approved in the May meeting. But you'll see that the general fund unassigned is going to have an increase of 645,000. Food service still going to be okay. The community ed service fund, that one's still kind of in a decrease. We are discussing with Michelle what she wants to try to do with fees there. So there could be a possible increase in the fees there, but the school readiness, again, this budget though does assume, that we come back. So, again, if there could be changes to this if there is a delay in the students coming back and the fees, part of this with that community service fund and in the general fund too. There's things there that if we don't come back with the students in the fall, there could possibly be changes here again. We just may not be revising it at the end of the year. We might be back in September, October, revising this because of the unknown. But as it stands, this would be the start of a regular year.
Yeah.
With the budget.
So just a couple things to add, and I know some of this is the obvious stuff maybe. So this budget starts on June 30th. So at the end of this month is when this budget year starts. One of the other things that's coming in this, and the reason for the larger positive number, is because the referendum that we passed last year, this is when we're actually starting to realize that money coming into our budget. And so these are the, so we were looking at last year's budget, and last year's budget did have that negative number. It actually had the negative number kind of coming into it, and was hoping that we passed the referendum. So this money, this budget is the first budget that shows that referendum increase coming in, the maintenance and the increase, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's some of the reasons we see these positive numbers. Knowing that, again, there's a lots of unknowns, including what the state budget is going to be and all those types of things with regard to increases. And so, and enrollment increases and all of those kinds of things that we're just guessing at.
And next year's, it is usually it's not so much of an unknown, but it's even, as Jeremy stated earlier, it's the year after this and the year after that we won't know until probably next spring when the legislature comes back and sets those 2 years worth of funding, the 21-22 school year and the 22-23 school year.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve.
Can I ask two questions?
Can we let's get the motions first, then
Oh,
you
yeah.
come back with the
Yep,
questions.
yep.
Get the motion to approve the preliminary budget for this next year.
I'll move.
So moved by Ryan.
I'll second. Lori?
Okay, so go ahead, Ryan, with your questions.
Just to make sure I understand, if community ed actually ends up negative at the end of the budget, we would have to do a general fund transfer to square that up, correct?
You don't have to. It can go into a negative. It would just have to try to look at its finances and do some adjustments in that fund. But the transfer was only allowed through this year.
Okay. And my second question is
Yeah, Ryan, before you keep going, because it's one of those things that historically we've had a negative budget that we had to make up over several years, a negative fund balance in our community ed.
That's
It was one of those things that we kept saying, look, you got to increase the fees. And I know the public doesn't like us increasing the fees, but we have to make up that negative amount
Right.
somehow.
Yep.
You know, whether it's additional enrollment for people paying the fees or actually increasing the fees, we have to look at those.
And then my second question is more procedural. If once we know how the school year is kind of gonna lay out, again, hypothetical, we don't go back and these numbers get skewed because of how the funding is calculated and all of that, how often do we have to revise and adopt another, is it based on materiality or?
No, you would only have to do it once. I mean, again, actually, but if things are happening, I think it wouldn't probably hurt to do one. Say we were out for 2 months and, you know, and we did this distance learning yet for 2 months. Whatever changes we would possibly make or discuss doing, then I would probably incorporate those into this and bring it earlier, and then probably do another one next spring when we'd be doing the next 22-20 or 21-22 school year also.
I was just thinking from a transparency spot, if we know some variables are moving and we can kind of
Yeah.
peg those based on what's happened, I think the community would appreciate that.
Yeah, and I guess from my standpoint, I would leave some of that discretion up
Right.
to the finance committee.
Yep.
And you guys on the finance committee, if you think you need to make that committee report or ask Kevin to bring that report and us adopt a revised one, then I mean, because there's half the board is on that committee. I think you guys can make that decision.
Yep, fair enough. Thanks.
Any other questions from other board members? Okay, hearing none, again, we'll vote when I call your name, signify by saying aye or nay. So Mark, aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Connie?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And Ryan?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Back to the agenda, and our agenda is complete, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Superintendent thing next month, right?
Oh, yeah, we're adjourned. Yeah. Yeah.